Right, if I haven't professed my love for micro drivers enough in my final E3000 review yet, I'll put it in the cards. I love micro drivers, though most micro drivers, as I've said before, they have many inherent weaknesses due to their small size. And the only micro driver I've seen so far to be able to beat back that trend is the final E3000. Well, I think we might have seen the next earphone to be able to pull off the same feat at a very entry level price even. Yes, today I will be reviewing the Moondrop Quarks, which is Moondrop's latest addition to their budget lineup and possibly their best yet. And with that, let's get into the review of the Moondrop Quarks. So we have this very small, petite little black cardboard box for the Moondrop Quarks. It's got this sort of Free Circles logo. I guess maybe they changed their logo? Probably, who knows? Aside from this kind of obnoxious sticker, you know, you've got some Moondrop text on the side, the Quarks name, and of course in the back you get your usual sort of frequency response and you know all of the marketing stuff. Pretty nice little simple box actually. I like it. Minimalistic. So you open this little flap here and we have Anime Girl. There we go. This one actually looks similar to the anime waifu from the Spaceship for some reason, so I'm gonna show a picture of the Spaceship waifu. This looks pretty similar actually, but okay, so this is sort of your I guess wearing guide. Here it is, and of course we're presented with the Moondrop Quarks themselves. They're stuck into this sort of cardboard inlay here. So underneath the cardboard inlay with the Quarks, you get your carrying pouch. This is somewhat different from the usual black carrying pouch we see. It's sort of like a slight grayish color, a little warm color, grayish. The texture itself is quite felt. I think this may attract some dust later, but it feels nice. It's got like this little rich sort of slight texture, if you can see that. It seems to be, you know, your standard carrying pouch with a zipper and all that. Alright, pretty good. You know, for about $15, yeah, pretty good inclusion. And of course, who could forget the generic normal Moondrop silicone ear tips? You know, you've seen this on a bunch of other Moondrop IMs and you'll see it here as well. They're just generic silicone tips with a grayish, slightly transparent, opaque color. Not much to say about it, it's alright, I guess. And finally, we have our instruction manual. Let me see here. Oh, it's also doubling as a warranty card. Okay, it's in English, so no Chinese here. Pretty good. Yeah, it's just a short little manual, nice little thing. That's it. So for about 10 to 15 bucks, I think Moondrop did an alright job for an unboxing experience. You get this really small, minimalistic box, which doesn't evoke that KZ feeling of mass-produced packaging. You get the little, you know, wearing guide and the Anime Girl print, though Moondrop did reuse the waifu from the Spaceship. You thought I didn't notice, but I did, Moondrop. I'm watching you. Give me new waifus, man. And unlike KZ's, where you just get some extra tips, Moondrop has the decency to also throw in a carrying pouch, especially for the price. I'm quite okay with this, especially when some ear tips can cost more than the price of the Quarks themselves. Moondrop did pretty good. Okay, so here are the Moondrop Quarks in the flesh. So as you can see, it's got a standard bullet type design. It's transparent plastic, so you can actually see the innards. You can see the wire assembly here, you can see the driver, and this bit I would think is some foam for dampening, probably. The drivers themselves are magnetic, so they sort of stick to each other like this. I don't know if this is gonna damage the drivers or not. I wouldn't think so, but be aware of that. In the back you can see red and black printing, so I presume these are your left-right indicators as well. You can see the L and R text on top of the logo. The printing quality itself looks a little rough, but you know, it's budget stuff, so I'm not surprised, I guess. The wire is a silver-ish color, space gray maybe. In terms of microphonics, it's average. It's not the greatest thing ever, and it's a little heavy, so it may drag the Moondrop Quarks out of your ears, but it's alright. Let's say compared to the cable of the Spaceship, it's a little more malleable, but it's a little thicker as well. You of course have the rubber Moondrop Y splitter over here, and a standard looking L-shaped headphone jack. Again, nothing special, but it works. For like a budget product, this is absolutely fine for me. You also get this pretty thick cable wrap, Velcro wrap, which is also a nice inclusion. Keeps your cable tidy. So yeah, pretty nice. For size comparison of the body of the housing of the Quarks, here's it compared to the Moondrop Spaceship. So the Spaceship's a little longer, and from feeling it out, I think the Quarks will be a little lighter thanks to it being plastic, whereas this thing is a metal. And I also have the final E3000 here with me. Very similar shapes here. It's a standard sort of bullet-shaped cylinder thing. I'd say the Quarks is a little bigger than the final E3000, but the E3000 also has a longer length, a little bit longer as well. But yeah, I would say these are very low profile actually, and it's nice that Moondrop took cues from the final design, because I do think this standard bullet shape looks very nice as it is, and now with the transparent plastic, the Quarks do indeed look quite attractive, really. I would say there's a little bit of like glue residue within the assembly, but otherwise it looks nice. So for source matching, it's a close race between the DX150 and the LGV20 actually. I don't think the Quarks was able to make use of the DX150 to get more details, and the nature of the AK chip in the iBaso player makes it so that the Quarks tuning seem like it has a bit of a slight veal going on, at least for this pairing. Hence why I'm going to be using the LGV20 for listening with the Moondrop Quarks. It gives the Quarks that extra bit of treble energy that it needs to get out of the territory of sounding slightly blunted and into the territory of having actual clarity. As for tip rolling, I will say that it doesn't affect the mids and highs much if you change tips, but you will get differing bass performance depending on what tips you use. So if you use smaller size ear tips, the bass quantity is going to be less. Why this is, I will have an explainer video coming soon, or whenever I make it, I guess. But yeah, aside from that, just choose something that is comfortable for you. I'm gonna be sticking with the standard sort of medium-sized generic ear tips that Moondrop gave you. It's the most alright out of my ear tip collection, and it doesn't negatively affect bass impact. Also, I can't seem to identify any vents on the Quarks. As you can see here, I don't seem to find any like portholes or anything with it. So although this did not cause any driver flex, at least not any that I've been able to detect, it does mean that when you insert them straight into your ears, it does cause a little suction effect in your ear. So I would recommend that when you wear the Moondrop Quarks, that you would pull up the top of your ear, I think this is called the helix, and then put the corks in like this to sort of minimize the ear suction effect. And with that, let's get into the sound of the Moondrop Quarks. So, Moondrop has a good thing going on here with the corks, because yeah, with a budget of about $15 and using a smaller driver unit, it's gonna be hard to win in any sort of technical competition. So instead of that, Moondrop has elected to make an enjoyable sound that lets the listener forget about all that and just enjoy the music. It's sort of similar to the final E3000's tuning direction in that it goes for a warm, easy to listen sound that I think has paid off, starting with the bass. For a micro driver, the Quarks' bass is surprisingly present. Don't get me wrong here, it's still a micro driver. If you're a bass head, you can go to the Blonde Mini for that. But if it's just for general listening, the bass performance here is perfectly sufficient. It's definitely got a softer texture, and although sub bass sort of misses the lowest registers of music and bass, and its slam is also a little anemic, it does decently to fill up the low end for most music genres given electronic and even like the more slightly heavier stuff. And the thing I'm most impressed with is that not only did Moondrop manage to make a micro driver with actually present bass, it has been able to mitigate, for the most part, the weaknesses of micro drivers. Even when the volume is turned up a little higher than usual, although it does exhibit some distortion, as most earphones do, the driver doesn't become overloaded, and the bass doesn't affect the mids and highs in an unacceptable way. And I can hear very little of the ringing that affected the Moondrop Spaceship, and almost none of the raspiness that I've experienced with the Moondrop SSP. So I've gotta say, well done, Moondrop. And as always, Moondrop's bread and butter is, it's always been their really effervescent mids, and it shows once more with the Quarks. The timbre of this mid-range is very natural, it's warm, and it makes for an addicting listening experience. There's a bit of a peak at about 2.8K on the frequency response, but it's actually not bad at all, and it gives instruments a bit of a crisp texture and sort of tricks you into thinking that the Quarks can present more detail than it really does. And like I said, the Quarks makes you think it is technically sufficient, but perhaps the budget hardware part of it still shows up though. As for busier songs, the mids become a little compressed and messy, and that upper mid peak can sometimes be a problem, as although Moondrop vocals are smooth and emotional as always, this peak, depending on what song you listen to, it can make vocals a little strident and a little grainy. But otherwise, it's what you expect from a Moondrop product. It's a lovely ride in terms of the mid-range. And yeah, if there's anything I can fault the tuning of the Moondrop Quarks with, it's gonna be the treble performance. Moondrop's tuning has always gone for this very inoffensive treble, very subdued, and it's worked out fine for the most part. But with the Moondrop Quarks, I think this treble may have been a little too subdued. Because for 80% of the songs I listen to, that 2.8K peak, it's enough to make music have sufficient clarity. But for some of the lighter genres or stuff with stringed instruments or some piano music even, this treble, it's just not that present, and it feels like the Quarks is lacking the sparkle needed for upper harmonics to shine through. Basically, when the music plays well with that peak we talked about, the Quarks is gonna sound pleasant. but when it doesn't, the Quarks can seem to struggle with adequately presenting air in songs. So yeah, that's probably gonna be the biggest weak point of the Quarks, but you know, for a budget package, it's quite alright. The soundstage of the Quarks is, again, pretty good. It's decently wide, which is to say that it goes out a little bit more than your head. But I will say that this can depend on what you listen to. Some songs, the Quarks can sound wide, others, the soundstage can seem to be more narrow. Moondrop has also been able to rectify another problem with microdrivers, and that is the lower listening volumes compared to normal sized earphones. I have no problem getting the Quarks decently loud with my sources, and it'll most likely be perfectly listenable with your typical built-in 3.5mm output or your typical consumer grade dongle. All that praise aside though, the small driver still exhibits weaknesses, amplified perhaps by, I guess, the price target that Moondrop needs to achieve, which is the ultra budget range. But Quarks has a really average resolution within the realm of microdrivers and slightly below average when compared with standard sized IEMs. Like I said, it tries to mask this with the tuning, but you can still notice it with busy or complex songs. The Quarks are able to retrieve a decent amount of detail, but it's not really good at showing it. Because the separation, it's regrettably another thing that kind of reminds you of the fact that the Quarks is ultimately a budget offering. I actually think that Moondrop is pretty savage for releasing the Quarks, because I do think that the Quarks has essentially power creeped the Moondrop Spaceship and SSP. This is good though, because it shows that Moondrop isn't afraid to one-up their products at even lower prices. Because the Moondrop SSP and the Spaceship, they shared the weaknesses of a slightly shouty, thin, and somewhat cold sound, and the typical microdriver weaknesses of distortion and raspiness that they exhibit, all of which have been improved upon by the Moondrop Quarks. The only thing that the Spaceship and the SSP has over the Quarks is their slightly better technicalities. But I don't think this is really enough to make them better than the Quarks though. If you really wanted an upgrade on a technical front, you might as well spring for the Aria or the Starfield. So, if you're considering the free models in the budget lineup of Moondrop, the Spaceship, the SSP, and these Quarks, I think the Quarks is a no-brainer purchase. It's cheaper, and arguably it's better than its more expensive brethren in the budget price range. When you look at the final E3000, it's still the better IEM compared to the Quarks. It's better built, with a thinner and lighter cable, and those final Type E ear tips are a killer inclusion. The E3000 is also more technically proficient than the Quarks. It wins out in separation and detail retrieval for sure. But you really have to commend Moondrop, because they've been able to achieve like 70% of what the E3000 can do at about 10 to 15 bucks. The Quarks emulated what it can from the E3000, namely the small bullet design and the somewhat similar tuning direction of a soft, warm, and easy to listen sound signature with the extra added usual Moondrop flair. Sure, the E3000 wins in terms of sound quality, but even with its inclusion of final Type E tips, I think the value win is definitely going to the Quarks. It's able to emulate a large part of the E3000 and doing it at the ultra budget, aka the college student price tier. Watch out, Final Audio, there's a new kid in town that may outshine you, and his name is Moondrop. Moondrop Quarks, to be precise. Now, the Tanchijim Tanya is perhaps not a microdriver, but it's small enough to sort of be close to category. and I've seen it pitched as a Quarks alternative at times. Well, I'm here to tell you that the Tanya doesn't hold a candle to the Quarks. It has an overly warm sound, a narrow, stuffy soundstage with like even less technical performance than the Quarks, and a lack of treble energy makes for a very suffocating presentation. The only saving grace of the Tanya is that the low end, it can dish out some quite thick slams, and its warmth does make for, a very unique presentation of pianos where it's emphasized and it feels like very close up to the mix. But yeah, the lacking treble is just bad. I take the Moondrop Quarks over the Tanchijim Tanya any day. So, despite some of my critique about the technical performance of the Moondrop Quarks, these weaknesses are very easy to swallow in light of the great tuning and the fact that you can buy it for the price of a couple lunches essentially. Moondrop has been able to rectify many of the typical weaknesses of microdrivers, allowing the Quarks to surpass the Spaceship and the SSP, and getting close to even my current top microdriver, the final E3000. If this is what Moondrop is now able to do with a roughly $15 budget, then I am excited to see what they can now do for microdrivers at a higher price segment. Come on, Moondrop, give me a flagship microdriver, will ya? Because I will be watching with bated breath. Alright, we've reached the end of yet another review. Of course, as usual, I'll leave the links to the music I used in the description. I'll leave a link to my website, where you can check out some more written reviews, some of my old art projects, and the About section where you'll find a variety of ways to donate to me. Speaking of donations, I also have my Patreon link down in the description. Right now, if you donate $5 to me, it's essentially going to be a donation tier. For $10, you'll have access to my video scripts, and of course, I'll be getting to adding more rewards soon. Stay tuned for that. But if you want, these reviews to come out faster, if you want me to have the budget to buy the gear to bring in for review, that's how you'll be able to support me. Otherwise, like the video if you like it, subscribe if you want to see more of this. If you have any suggestions or questions, leave it in the comments. I'll try my best to respond to you. And just thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.